Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new three-part SD Times live micro-webinar series. We'll be looking at application quality. I'm Dave Rubenstein, editor-in-chief of SD Times, and today's topic is taking a strategic approach to quality with generative AI. I'm joined today by Kevin Parker, who's the vice president of product at test automation company Appvance. Thanks for being here, Kevin.
You know, Dave, it's always a pleasure to hang out with you on these things.
Yeah, I enjoy them too. So why don't we get right into it and talk about what everyone's talking about these days, and that's generative AI. How far has it come, and how can it impact software quality?
So I think we are just beginning to see the impact. I was reminded recently of the fear and trepidation that went through the accounting world when spreadsheets were introduced. And in fact, I discovered in my research that there's actually a spreadsheet day in the calendar now, October the 17th, the day that VisiCalc was introduced by Apple. But of course, the effect was completely profound for the accountants. It didn't reduce the number of accountants, quite the opposite. It made accountants have the ability to provide their businesses with insights they've never seen before. And ChatGPT is going to do the same for written language that spreadsheets did for mathematics. The language is a much more complicated thing, and so it's not surprising it took a while for us to have that moment too. As far as testing is concerned, really anything that we do in the testing space, and I'm talking about quality as an end-to-end story here. So this is going to impact the dev team and their approach to quality, and the test team and their approach to quality. Anything they do that is repetitive is probably something where some kind of generative AI can help them out.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So let me ask you. Let's talk about the impact on testing and how you can help take that to the next level. So maybe we can talk about a little bit on finding bugs and automated testing and how that can help lead to more quality software.
I don't know about you, David, but if your experience is anything like mine, we do all of that testing prior to shipping the release. And then the release goes out and we have a little celebration. And then within a few days, we start to get the first bugs reported coming back in. And the first question is, well, if we did all that testing, how come we're still getting bugs reported? And I think it's because we've been wedded to this idea that test coverage is how we should measure the effectiveness of a test team. And I read a definition the other day that test coverage is every conceivable user flow. And I thought about that for a minute. I thought, wait, there's a fallacy there, right? It's that word conceivable. If humans have to conceive of it, then we're going to miss some things. And I think that's why we get those bugs reported, because the end users go off the script. They do something unexpected. They stumble into a part of the application they weren't supposed to get to. And sometimes the results are embarrassing, and sometimes the results are serious. And so we have to find another way to test our applications more thoroughly. The problem is that we have finite resources and finite time to get the testing completed. And even if we complete maybe 50% of the test cases that we've been given, we're covering the majority of the risk at that point. But we still haven't covered everything. And we certainly haven't approached those parts of the user flow that we didn't think about. And so this is why I think that AI is going to make such a profound difference to us, because the AI is not bounded by human imagination. Essentially, we've got an army of bots. We can launch as many of them as we want that can navigate every expected user flow as defined in the test cases, but also with permission to go off the script and look to see if there are other user flows that can be found. And it's much better that we dive into the dark corners of the application before it gets in the hands of the end users.
Mhm.
And you know what I think is going to be an interesting second order effect of this, David, is it's going to be how we measure the effectiveness of our test teams, and ultimately how we compensate them. Because today we measure project success by how much test coverage was achieved, but that's limited by that human imagination to think of test cases.
Mhm.
Now we've got an inexhaustible supply of test resources that can find every nook and cranny and test it. So we need to shift away from that measurement to something else. And I was at a conference last week talking to customers about the idea that we maybe should start measuring test effectiveness by just how well we find bugs, not the volume of bugs, but perhaps we should be looking at, when is the first bug reported after we release, so we measure mean time to failure. We maybe measure on how many bugs are reported between releases. And that becomes the measurement for seeing how effective our test life cycle is. And as I say, for me, the test life cycle is everything, right? So it's how dev drive quality into the code, and how and perhaps for the first time in our history, we actually get to live up to our name, how the test team assure the quality of that code before it meets the customer and the end user.
Interesting. You talk about the AI being able to find things that perhaps people didn't think of, whatever. How do you train the AI to do that? I mean, it's humans training the AI, so there is limitation there. So how do you overcome that to ensure that you're testing the right places?
Yeah, that's a really important question, David. So one of the changes I expect we will see is that when the requirements are being created, today, when we create requirements, we have in mind an audience who are developers and testers. But in the future, I think we're going to have an audience in mind that are going to be people who train AI, because I think that the domain experts in the organization are going to become a much more important part of any quality team in our organization. And that means we have to think about what the AI requires in order to be trained. And for my part, the AI blueprinting technology that we have, it turns out that training the AI is actually a relatively straightforward thing. There are currently two ways to train our AI. One is the humans doing it, sitting down and having a training session. And for that part, the humans really need to communicate to the AI only in three ways. How to behave. So we need to teach the AI, if you come across one of these things, do this thing, or don't do this thing. Actually, the secret source of AI training we've learned is it's just as important to tell the AI what not to do as what to do. The second thing that the AI needs to know is, what are the business rules? What are the essential ingredients of this application? What are the business outcomes that are expected? And how do you know that you're in a situation where you have to validate that? So the second thing is validations. What kinds of things do you need the AI to know? So, a simple example, that if the AI is looking at a delivery date, it should be in the future. If it's looking at a date of birth, it should be in the past. And so those are easy rules to train the AI. The difference being between the AI and the human is that the AI is going to go everywhere in the application. And so whenever it encounters an opportunity to test that, it will do so. And you have to be careful when you train the AI. We start out with very coarse rules. So we'll say, make sure the delivery date is in the future. But then, of course, there's that part of the application where we're looking at the history of deliveries. And so those dates are necessarily in the past. And so you refine your business rules in your training as you go. It's very analogous to having a manual tester on your team on their first day. What do you tell them to get them going? And then the third thing is the AI needs to know what data to use. the AI knows that it can't progress through a data entry form and get that submit button to turn green unless it enters a valid set of data or deliberately enters an invalid set of data. So it needs to know what data to use. And I think what we'll see is our requirements engineers now mindful of the needs of the AI to be trained, that they'll start to call out those things, those behaviors, those validations, and those data entry opportunities to make it easier for us to train. And the upside of that is that when it comes to test cases, we don't have to write all the test cases anymore, because if the AI has the ability to completely navigate through every user flow in the application, we only really need to write those. The compliance officer or the auditor, maybe the product owner is going to demand to see a human write. And again, we can have the AI help with that. And remember, I said there were 2 ways of training. Well, it turns out that if you think about what is in a test script, it's how to behave, what to validate, and what data to use. And so you can actually use those human written test scripts as a way of training your AI.
It's fantastic. All right. Kevin Parker, thank you so much for your time today. Certainly appreciate it. I want to let people know that with Appvance and a few other vendors, we produced a test automation buyer's guide, which is available now on the sdtimes.com website, where you can find out a whole lot more about some of the things that Kevin's been talking about here today. And I also invite you to join us on October the 24th at 1 p.m. for episode 2 of this micro-webinar series, where we'll be looking at the journey to automation maturity. So until then, folks, I'm Dave Rubenstein, editor-in-chief of SD Times. So long for now. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, David.